Okay, welcome back. I can't get no satisfaction. That's what we're going to talk about. We're talking about satisfaction in our office processes. And I will tell you, if you join me in the neurofeedback expert program, there is possibly a song or two in there also. But we need to provide satisfaction to our people so they feel great about it and they get their goals met, their clinical outcomes met. So let's talk about satisfaction. Again, built on neuroscience and a strong business model. Number one, clinical outcomes. People have problems and they are coming to you for solutions. So you have to be able to show them, first and foremost, their progress, well, two things. Their progress in terms of their trend graphs and changes that are happening in their brain performance, improvements. You need to show them how that's happening neurologically. And I have to tell you, a lot of people skip this when they're using neurofeedback, which to me is mind-blowing and silly because it's literally one of very few treatment modalities that is completely measurable and quantitative. So use it so that you can show people. They love it. People absolutely love the trend graphs, and you can learn how to share them very quickly without giving them too much information. And you can show them how those trend graphs transfer over into their behavioral improvements. So their behavior is going to improve. And sometimes when you're talking with people, you have to make sure they understand that's not by chance. And if you're working with people, you'll know that a lot of times people think their improvements are by chance and whatever problems they have is because of your treatment. But when you have the graphs to inform this, you can say your response to training is very strong, and across your trend graphs, across sessions, I see continual improvement moving in the right direction. And then they'll say, oh yeah, studying's easier, my grades are going up, you know, little Jimmy's interaction with our family's better, there hasn't been any fights in 2 weeks. You show them it's because his brain is more regulated now, those improvements are happening. So what it does is it provides satisfaction because they get that things are getting better in their life because of neurofeedback. Hugely powerful. At the same time, you want to be able to provide an enjoyable experience. Think Starbucks. So McDonald's tends to not be that enjoyable of an experience for people, so because the food quality and the experience, but Starbucks is very pleasurable. Make your office like the Starbucks of neurofeedback. And I'll tell you we do it in a few ways, and just a couple examples is that it's very pleasurable for patients. I tell people that our sessions take 37 minutes, which is another psychological trigger. When you use very specific details instead of, it's about 35 to 40 minutes, when you use specific details, they know that you know what you're doing. It takes 37 minutes because it takes, this number of minutes to put a person on, this number to get them off, and the session is exactly 30 minutes long. Now, is it every time? Probably not, but it's very close, so a person knows they will be in my office for 37 minutes. And we tell people we always run on time, so we respect your time. You will never have to wait long for their session. People come into us a lot, so some people come in for 50 sessions, 75 sessions. I had to wait half hour for a half-hour session 50 times. I would not be able to do it. So that's the pleasurable experience. Families know they can drop their kids off and 37 minutes later, their kiddo is going to be ready for them. And for younger kids, my team walks them out to the person's car if they have younger children. Parents love it. It becomes super easy for them to bring their kiddo to our office for neurofeedback. We have 2 waiting rooms. That's not really by design, but we take advantage of it. Our office happens to have 2 waiting areas, and one technically is very much like Starbucks. Over in our main area, we have music playing, we have a coffee and tea machine, we have water. There tends to be a lot of chatting, higher energy, but it feels great. The second waiting room, we have spa music. There's no food or drink there. Children usually don't go back there. Kids are out in the main waiting room. So it's more like if you just want to chill and not talk with people and have it be quiet, you use waiting room number 2. We have a chaise lounge there, so people will actually lay in it. Very, very pleasurable for people. So in every aspect, we have a pleasure aspect to our experience, and I encourage you to do that too. And one of my philosophies in life and in practice is to educate, empower, and inspire people. So I'm always teaching people, and I'm trying to empower them to make great decisions for themselves and to get inspired around the idea of creating brain health and a strong brain pattern so that they can rock out their best life and reach their full potential. And I truly believe that these brain patterns can be overcome, they can be changed, they can be improved. What that means is their full potential is being blocked by these brain patterns, and I have the ability to help them unblock themselves. So I provide that education, empowerment, and inspiration in little tiny doses all along the way. I encourage you to do so too. Okay, this is hugely important. What does your program look like? What it should look like is systematized yet individualized. And what do I mean by that? Everybody should be doing the same thing. So our process of QEEG brain map, if they don't want to schedule, then consultation's an option. Then they're scheduled right away for the report of findings. The report of findings is the exact same every single time. Our steps are all the same. But it's individualized within that. So I don't always recommend the same program because some people's brain maps have a little bit of work that needs to be done. Some people's brain maps have a significant amount of work that needs to be done. So those people need a small program versus a big program. So then it's individualized within that. We have the same progress monitoring check-ins and progress evaluation meetings, but of course people's needs are different. So it's individualized within that. There's a script that keeps us grounded, but we're serving people individually. We have a continuum of care, and what I mean by that is we have our main neurofeedback program of in-office services. We also use remote neurofeedback. We have brain health coaching. We have a psychologist who provides psychotherapy. We have a massage therapist. Like I told you, my husband's a chiropractor. We offer food sensitivity testing. We have a posture program. So there's continuum of care to meet people's needs. So people move through the program, but there's different aspects for individual people. So thus, everybody's doing the same thing, but no one is doing exactly the same thing. Everybody has individualized training protocols. And this is what I was saying earlier, that you need to become very strong in being able to look at a person's response to training and have a sense of if a different protocol is warranted to help that person reach their goals as fast as possible. And so when we check people's graphs, every session we check the graphs and analyze them. And then when we have the check-ins, there's times where we deem a protocol change or a site change would be an important thing to do to help to serve that person. So it's all individualized. Training in progress will look and feel different for each person. We'll make those modifications. And I tell you, when we show the person the graph, we make the modification and then the graph looks better. Huge power in that, because now your patient is so confident that you're actually thinking about them and you're actually caring for them, which we are. And I want you to be able to do so too. And so then people's behavioral gains are attained. We need to help people measure that. And sometimes we need to help them see that. And so, of course, that's all idiosyncratic for each person. But we have an answer for everything at every step of the way while we're individualizing it to meet people's needs. Okay, so brain shift programs, part of my neurofeedback expert formula, is based on neuroplasticity. You need to know what you're recommending based on a brain map and why. And again, another reason, 90% of the reason I'm sitting here recording this for you is because a major pet peeve is when people just recommend 20 sessions. They have absolutely no idea why. The person comes in for 20 sessions. They have no idea what's going on with the person, and they just recommend 20 more sessions. And I will tell you, that's good for my business, because a lot of people who go to other neurofeedback practitioners end up working with me remotely if they're far away, because they want neurofeedback, but none of that process made sense to them. But ideally, I want those people going to their community to an awesome neurofeedback practice, which is a neurofeedback expert, which is why I'm here doing this. So you have to make your care recommendations based on science, based on the brain map, and you need to know why you're recommending a certain amount of sessions, and you need to be fairly confident you're going to be able to achieve the outcomes within that number of sessions. So you need to be able to keep people in care long enough to help them. For me, that's 1 year. And we decrease frequency as we see people's trend graphs improving. And it's in a program. We do it systematically, yet individually, of course. But we keep people in care long enough to help them change their brain performance and improve their lives. So the idea is if you recommend 20 sessions and that person comes in 2 times a week for 10 weeks, is 10 weeks long enough to change the performance of someone's brain that's been stuck that way for 20 years? No, it's not. So you need to be able to provide enough time. It's time and training. And I will say that over and over in my interactions with people. People need time and training to be able to get better. Give them the training, give them the time, and they will get better. And you need to know how to gauge progress and communicate it well. Interpret the trend graphs, but your patients don't need to know everything about the trend graphs. They need to know the important piece for them. And really, a takeaway from that is, even if you know the person has a strong response to training, I tell people, or actually my technicians are only allowed to tell people during the visits because they're not allowed to answer any questions. All they're allowed to tell people is, you really needed this session. You have an excellent response to training. This will make you feel better. If they see a strong response to training, you could start there. That's a great script. You really needed this. And the way you know a person really needed the session is they start high or low in the thing you're trying to change, and it actually changes. So for ADHD, if theta's high and you see it come down across the session, you really needed this. You had an excellent response to training. That's going to make you feel better. So the response to training is the line decreasing. It's going to make them feel better because their brain is in a calmer and more focused state. You could start there. And you want to use your progress monitoring based on scientific data, which is your trend graphs and your knowledge base behind them. And continuum of care, like I've already said, is less or more sessions when necessary. So we decrease people's frequencies unless there's a reason not to. And it's all scientific. It's based on a feedback loop. If you want to know how feedback loops work, you can go to my YouTube channel. You can subscribe because I make new videos each week for neurofeedback experts and put them out there. But there's videos on changing a negative feedback loop to a positive feedback loop. And that's how neurofeedback works, to be able to create the changes and then have them stay long-term for people. And if you know that, then you'll be able to really help people. Okay, let's interpret some trend graphs very quickly here. The first trend graph up at the left is a person with anxiety. How do we know this? Start thinking about this for a second. Look in those lines. So just to frame it, if you don't remember, the top lines are delta, extra slow speed. The green lines are theta, slow speed. Then next we have the blue lines are alpha, the red lines are beta, and the yellow lines are high beta. If someone is struggling with anxiety, their high beta is being used excessively. And what we see in this graph, actually high beta starts low, but this is the case for many people with anxiety, because as they engage in this process, their anxiety will increase, but then it will train down because of neurofeedback. First of all, you can see all those spikes in training. I call them training spikes, up and down of all the colors. That's response to training. But you can see the yellow line that increases and then has these spikes but decreases across the session is a great response to training for anxiety. We have brain fog down in the right-hand corner. How do we know it's brain fog? Alpha starts above everything else on both sides of the brain this time. So the blue line is above the other lines. And besides that, things are in pretty good shape. But awesome response to training, we see that blue lines start high and then have a beautiful downward trend across the session. That's a great response to training. You really needed this. You had an excellent response to training. This is going to make you feel better. And that's what a brain fog graph would look like. But you need to be able to share the metrics quickly and easily with people. How do we gauge progress? Okay, so let's look at session number 1. These are both on a 20-point scale here. And you can see session number 1, delta starts at 20 and decreases across the session, looking beautiful. And we'll just look at that parameter to keep things easy for us. In session number 16, delta is now starting at 16 and maxing at 18, and is coming down and averaging around 15 with a nice downward trend. So we see session number 16, delta is significantly lower. That's how you gauge progress. We want to look for changes in the parameters that we care about, in this case, delta, and we see that it's now starting lower and it's sustaining and maintaining a lower profile across the session. So we see improvements across sessions. Hopefully that makes sense to you in a real quick soundbite. Okay, office processes. Again, still the neurofeedback expert formula that I teach people. What is the investment for your program and why? You need to know that. So pricing needs to feel good to you. And I tweak my pricing a couple times, and yeah, I definitely could go higher. And I usually go a little higher each year for inflation. But my pricing feels spot on for me. So again, I feel really confident. And people will ask me all the time, like, shouldn't this be less? No, this is the perfect amount of investment for what you're getting. So neurofeedback expert program has a pricing model that I teach people to use. It feels great to me. It's high, but not too high. And actually, you probably sensed me already just from our time together. I did all the research on related services that other people would be purchasing instead of neurofeedback. So I'm priced right in there where those other services are on the high end. And providing great value for the QEEG brain map and for the neurofeedback sessions. And like I've already told you, you should always have an offer. If you don't want to do $80 off, you could do $20 off. You want to have a reason to have that person commit at that moment to create urgency. We use scaled pricing, and this is important to me, presumably because I have such a large family, that what the scaled pricing provides is the more sessions you need, the less each session costs per session. So the session cost in the 50 session program is less per session than in our 39 session program. And so this way it helps people commit to the right number of sessions because they're getting a break on the session price. And again, it's a psychological trigger, but it feels really good to me too. What steps do you use in your process to keep the clients engaged? So we've already kind of dipped into this, but this is part of the satisfaction. So if people can't commit to a brain map, you want to provide them with something that feels good to them, that feels like a way they can get to meet you with no risk. And that's a consultation. So again, it's providing for people a satisfying experience that helps them to get out of their own way, is the way I think about it, to be able to commit to your program. People love the brain map. People hug me and thank me all the time during the brain map. People love the report of findings. People love each one of these steps. And another important piece is, for every step in our process for the neurofeedback expert formula, there's a piece of paper to go along with it. The piece of paper many times helps me glean more information, but most times it's for the patient's sake, so that I'm helping them to think of what I want them to think of within that part of the process. And like I've already told you, I'm going to stick to sound bites, so I'm getting their mind ready for that sound bite by using a piece of paperwork. And I think so many times in offices, paperwork's gotten out of control. And I know there's neurofeedback practices that do this. A family showed me that the neurofeedback intake was literally over 30 pages. So that they didn't want to go there because they didn't want to fill out 30 pages of intake. For me, I don't need 30 pages because I'm basing my care on the QEEG brain map, and then I'm carrying that over behaviorally. So if a person joins me for care, we get more information at that point. For the map, I don't need 30 pages. So, it's all history. I just need a brief history so I know what could be contributing factors for the brain map. But I don't want to give people a 30-page intake form that makes them want to not come in for the brain map. I want it to be easy peasy. So we use our current intake form is brain-based symptoms checklist. So people check things off, and then there are some areas where they can write in so I can know kind of more important information they can explain. Most of it's check boxes, so they can move through it quickly and easily and give me the information I need for that step without giving me way too much information. Okay, so now thinking about satisfaction within your process, who does what? Now, if you have a team roles really need to be delineated so that, first of all, your team knows what each person is doing. but more importantly, your patients know who to go to for what. And so in my office, we have, actually there's 6 of us. We have 6 team members and 2 play the same role, but I'm going to move you through them. If you are a sole practitioner, you may have to wear all of these hats. And when I started, I did everything. I was the sole practitioner. So what I did, and I recommend that you do, is you create time slots for each one of your roles so you're clear which role you're in, which hat you're wearing, when. So, and another way for you to grow your practice, and something I help people with is their growth trajectory, is to think about the roles that you love to play and then keep shifting your practice so you're only doing the roles that you really want to do, and you can farm out all the other roles to someone else, to another team member, at the point when you're ready to do that as you grow. So my filter now is, can anybody else do this thing well, or does it need to be me? And if it needs to be me, then I do it, of course, and then I usually love most of those roles. And if it can be done by someone else, I have someone else do that. And I'm going to explain to you how in just a second. So what do you want your growth trajectory to be? So I challenge you to think, you're at the outset of building your neurofeedback practice. What do you want it to look like? So people ask me all the time, how much do you make in your practice? And I make a lot for the amount of work we do. But yeah, I could make a lot more. I could be open more. I could have more systems. Right now we run 5 systems at a time simultaneously. But it's a lifestyle practice. So I'm very happy with the amount of income that we make. And I'm really loving the way that I built the practice, where other people do most roles and I get to do the things that I like. So that was my growth trajectory, which is why I grew it that way, because that's how I wanted it. So you have to be deliberate about it or it's not going to happen. What support team is needed to achieve that growth? So for me, this is the support team that was necessary to build a thriving practice that I don't have to really go to. And it's funny because I'm an educator. I've told you I've been a college professor my whole career. Even though I've been licensed as a clinician my whole career, I've always gravitated toward educating. It's the part that I love. So my role in the office is educational. And then now I have my consulting business, which is educational. So I am technically actually I'm no longer technically the practitioner. I was technically the practitioner for a long time. Now my husband is the practitioner in the office now that I'm really no longer there, and I haven't been there for a year now. But before that, I was the practitioner and my husband was more of an associate. Now he's the practitioner and I'm the consultant. And so the way that it works is I used to do all the thinking and all the communicating with people, and then he would comprehend a little bit of what I knew and he would be able to share with people in smaller roles. Now the way that we do it, he does all in-office care. He does all of the progress check-ins, progress monitoring. At the larger progress meetings, I have an educational meeting, a brain health coaching meeting with people, and I explain to them the things that they can do in their lifestyle to help their gains keep moving forward. But if you have an associate, your associate could do the quick progress check-ins and you could do the larger progress meetings. We have 2 different types of technicians. We have 2 technicians who run our rooms. So they're the ones who put people on and off of the system, using the PACE to connect the sensor, pulling up the protocols that we have chosen. All clinical care rests in our hands. It rests in the practitioner's hands. But then I have a chief technician who is moving towards board certification. I'm training her, and she's already trained to be able to analyze the trend graphs. And usually we do it together, but in my absence, she can make quick decisions on the trend graphs, or in my husband's absence, if we're busy or if he's busy and I'm not there, she can make some decisions, and she organizes all of people's trend graphs and their progress for us. And then our front desk person is our client liaison. She structures people's programs, keeps them scheduled, keeps them in care, and encourages them along the way. So what happens is, if a patient's in the waiting room and they have a question about how did the session go, that's the technician's responsibility, because the client liaison doesn't answer technical questions. The technicians who put people on and off, they cannot answer those questions either. Team roles are very clear. So if the technician putting the person on and off gets a question from a person, they immediately walk them out to the front desk, tell the client liaison, who then tells the head technician. And if one of the doctors is necessary, then a doctor is informed or an appointment is scheduled with the doctor. All flows beautifully because we know whose roles are what, and we know what the process is to get the person from the person they're talking to the appropriate role. So you may have to keep shifting your hats if you're the only one doing it, but you should be able to understand what I'm talking about, and it will be much easier for you to do. Okay, clear-cut roles. Download your downloadable and think about assigning roles to your team members if you have them, or delineating the time for yourself if all the roles are yours, so that you're not overlapping roles and all at one time. Because remember, you need to use the appropriate sound bites for each of those interactions to provide the small amount of information that the person needs at that moment. So you have to be really clear about what role you're in to be able to do that. Okay, so stay tuned because we're going to move on to the next lesson, which is advocacy, and then wrap up with loyalty. So download your downloadable and then click through the next lesson. Can't wait to see you there. Thanks.